Emily sat at the edge of her worn-out sofa, staring at the empty can of formula on the cluttered coffee table. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the small apartment, a faint reminder of how tightly she was holding her life together. Her daughter, Lily, lay asleep in the next room, her tiny face peaceful, unaware of the struggles her mother faced daily. With trembling fingers, Emily opened her phone and typed out a desperate text to Claire, her closest friend. "Hey, can you lend me some money to buy formula for Lily? Just until payday, I'm so sorry to ask again." Her heart clenched as she hit send. This wasn't the first time she'd needed help, and the weight of her situation pressed down on her like a storm cloud. But as she glanced at her phone, her stomach twisted in horror. The message hadn't gone to Claire. It had gone to Nick. Nick, her ex-husband. The Nick, who was now a billionaire tech CEO, gracing Forbes covers and attending galas while she scraped by in a rundown apartment. The same Nick who had walked out of her life when their marriage had crumbled, leaving behind broken promises and the dream of a family she had once cherished. She froze, her fingers hovering over her phone, ready to unsend the message, but before she could act, her screen lit up with his response. "Wait, I'm coming over now." Emily's heart raced. No. This couldn't be happening. She typed frantically. Sorry, wrong person, ignore this." She hit send and stared at the screen, her pulse thundering in her ears, but instead of calming her, the phone vibrated again. Her banking app notification. Curious and a little fearful, she opened it. Her breath caught in her throat. A deposit. $1 million. Her first thought was disbelief. Her second was that this had to be a mistake. But the sender's details confirmed it. The transfer was from Nick's corporate account. Her hand flew to her mouth. $1 million? For formula? She felt dizzy, the walls of her tiny apartment seeming to tilt and warp around her. A sharp knock on her door brought her crashing back to reality. Her mind raced. He couldn't have gotten here that fast. Could he? Shaking, she approached the door, her heart in her throat. Another knock, louder this time. She took a deep breath and opened it, only to find herself face to face with the man she hadn't seen in nearly 4 years. Nick stood there, his tailored suit impeccable, his expression unreadable. His sharp blue eyes softened as they met hers, but his presence filled the doorway, commanding and unnervingly calm. "Emily," he said, his voice a low rumble that made her knees weak. "We need to talk." Her voice caught in her throat. All she could do was stare at him, at the man who had once been her husband, now standing in her doorway holding all the power in the world. "Nick, she began, but the words wouldn't come. Her emotions were a chaotic storm. Panic, embarrassment, anger, and a flicker of something she couldn't quite name. He stepped inside without waiting for her invitation, his eyes scanning the apartment. The small space seemed even smaller now, and Emily wanted nothing more than to disappear. "What are you doing here?" she managed to croak out, her voice barely above a whisper. "You needed help," he said simply, "and I'm here." "Nick, this was a mistake. I didn't mean to send you that message," she stammered. "I didn't ask you for—" She gestured wildly, unable to say the words. $1 million? He finished for her, his lips curving into a slight smile. "I know, but I sent it anyway." "Why?" she demanded, her voice sharper now. "You don't owe me anything." He met her gaze, and for a moment she thought she saw something flicker in his expression. Regret, maybe, or guilt, but it was gone just as quickly. "Because I can," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her hands clenched into fists. "Nick, I don't need your charity. Emily," he interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. "You have a daughter to take care of. Our daughter." His words hit her like a thunderclap. Our daughter. She hadn't expected him to say that. He had always been distant, detached, and now here he was, claiming a stake in a life he had walked away from. "Lily is my responsibility," she said, her voice trembling. "Not yours." Nick's expression darkened. "She's mine too, and I'm not walking away this time." Emily's breath caught. This time, what did he mean by that? Before she could respond, another notification buzzed on her phone. She glanced down, and her blood ran cold. It wasn't just $1 million. It was a list of transfers, one after another in rapid succession, totaling $5 million. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing, Nick?" "I'm fixing things," he said, his tone resolute. "Starting now." But as he said those words, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that his sudden generosity wasn't just about Lily, or her. There was something else driving him, something he wasn't telling her, and she wasn't sure she wanted to find out. Emily sat frozen, her fingers trembling as they hovered over her phone. The string of bank notifications stared back at her, taunting her with numbers too large to comprehend. $5 million. Each transfer bore Nick's name as the sender, and each one felt like a weight sinking her deeper into unknown waters. Nick leaned against the edge of her tiny kitchen counter, watching her reaction. He seemed eerily calm, as though this were an everyday occurrence. His blue eyes, always sharp and calculating, now bore into her with an intensity that made her want to shrink away. "Emily," he began, his voice breaking the silence, "you don't have to look at me like I've just handed you a bomb." She snapped her head up, her expression a mix of disbelief and fury. "That's exactly what this is, Nick. A bomb. Do you have any idea what this looks like? I can't accept this." "You already have," he said, his tone cool but firm. "The money is in your account." "It's done." Emily shot to her feet, pacing the small living room. "This isn't about the money. You can't just show up after all these years, throw millions at me and expect everything to magically— What? Fix itself?" He straightened, his demeanor shifting as he closed the gap between them. "I don't expect anything, Emily, but I'm not going to stand by and watch you struggle, especially not when it affects Lily." At the mention of her daughter, Emily stopped pacing, her chest tightening. "Don't bring her into this. You don't get to waltz back into our lives and pretend to care. You left Nick, you left us." For the first time, Nick's confident facade cracked, his jaw tightened, and he exhaled slowly, as if grappling with something heavy. "I didn't leave because I didn't care," he said, his voice quieter now. "I left because I thought it was the only way to give you a chance to be happy." Emily stared at him, stunned. "Happy? You think abandoning your family was the answer? You don't get to rewrite history, Nick." His gaze dropped to the floor for a moment, before meeting hers again. "You're right," he admitted. "I made mistakes, but I'm here now, and I'm trying to make it right." She wanted to scream at him, to tell him that no amount of money could undo the hurt he'd caused. But before she could speak, a soft cry came from the next room. "Lily." Emily's instincts kicked in. She brushed past Nick without another word and disappeared into the bedroom. Her daughter's tiny form stirred under the covers, her cheeks flushed from sleep. Emily knelt by the bed, smoothing Lily's hair as the little girl blinked up at her with bleary eyes. "Mommy?" Lily murmured, her voice groggy. "It's okay, sweetheart," Emily whispered. "Go back to sleep." As Lily's eyes fluttered shut, Emily felt a wave of guilt crash over her. For all her anger and pride, the truth was undeniable. She did need help, but accepting it from Nick felt like opening a door she had fought so hard to keep shut. When she returned to the living room, Nick was still there, his hands in his pockets, watching her with an unreadable expression. For a moment they simply stared at each other, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "What do you want, Nick, really?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening again. "I want to be part of Lily's life," he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "And yours, if you'll let me." Her heart twisted at his words. It was the kind of thing she had once dreamed of hearing from him, but now it felt like a dangerous proposition. "You don't get to decide that," she said softly. "You can't just throw money at us and expect forgiveness." Nick's expression hardened slightly. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about responsibility. I've made more money than I know what to do with, Emily, but it means nothing if I can't use it to take care of the people I love." The word love hung in the air like a fragile thread. Emily wanted to believe him, but the wounds he had left behind were still raw. "I don't need you to take care of me," she said firmly. "I've been doing that just fine on my own." "Have you?" he asked, his voice gentle but pointed. "Because that message you sent me says otherwise." Her cheeks flushed with anger and shame. "That was a mistake. I meant to send it to Claire." "And if you had?" he challenged. "Would she have been able to give you what you needed? What Lily needed?" The truth hit her like a punch to the gut. Claire would have helped, of course, but she was barely scraping by herself. Emily had been too proud to ask anyone else, but her desperation had betrayed her. Nick stepped closer, his voice softening. "You don't have to do this alone, Emily. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just want to help." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to take the weight off her shoulders, if only for Lily's sake. But the fear of letting him back in, of giving him the power to hurt her again, was paralyzing. Before she could respond, Nick's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, his expression darkening as he read the screen. "What is it?" Emily asked. Her curiosity piqued despite herself. He hesitated, then showed her the message. It was a headline from a news alert. "Tech mogul Nick Dalton's mysterious $5 million transfer sparks questions." Her blood ran cold. "They already know." Nick nodded grimly. "This kind of money doesn't go unnoticed. The media's going to dig into it." Panic clawed at her chest. "And they'll find me," she realized. "They'll find Lily." Nick's expression softened, but there was a steely determination in his eyes. "Not if I can help it. I'll handle this, Emily, I promise." But as he spoke, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a storm that would upend their lives in ways neither of them could predict. Emily's hands clenched into fists as she stared at the headline on Nick's phone. Her mind raced, imagining reporters swarming her apartment, Lily's name plastered across the tabloids, and her carefully constructed walls of privacy crumbling under the weight of Nick's wealth and notoriety. "This is a disaster," she whispered. "Why would you transfer so much money at once? Did you think no one would notice?" Nick slid the phone back into his pocket, his jaw tightening. "I didn't think it would matter," he said. "I wasn't going to let anything happen to you or Lily. That's what matters." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Do you even hear yourself? You just handed the media a weapon to use against us. They'll dig into my life, and Lily's too. How am I supposed to protect her from that?" Nick's eyes softened, but his voice remained firm. "You're not alone in this, Emily. I'll make sure they don't get near either of you." She shook her head, the anxiety building like a tidal wave. "You don't understand. They'll twist everything. I'll become some sob story about the struggling single mum, and you'll be the savior billionaire swooping in to save the day. Is that what you want?" Nick flinched at her words, but before he could respond, her phone buzzed. She snatched it off the table, expecting another news alert or, worse, a message from someone who had already seen the headline. Instead, it was Claire. "Emily, are you okay? Did you see the news? Call me." Emily's stomach dropped. The story was already spreading. She took a shaky breath and turned to Nick. "I need you to leave." His brows furrowed. "What? You've done enough damage," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to figure out how to fix this." "Emily, don't do this," Nick pleaded, stepping closer. "I can help. Let me help." Her eyes burned with unshed tears as she looked up at him. "You don't get it, Nick. Every time you try to help, it just makes things worse. Please, just go." Nick hesitated, his expression conflicted. For a moment she thought he might argue, but then he gave a curt nod. "Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over." With that, he turned and walked out, leaving Emily alone in the suffocating silence of her apartment. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of her phone buzzing incessantly. She groaned, rubbing the sleep from her eyes, and reached for the device. The screen was flooded with notifications, texts, missed calls, and emails. Her heart sank as she opened her inbox. The media frenzy had begun. One email stood out among the others, its subject line reading, "Exclusive interview request, your side of the story." Emily's stomach churned as she skimmed the message, which promised a generous payment in exchange for her insights into her past with Nick. Her thoughts were interrupted by another buzz, a text from an unknown number. "I'm outside. We need to talk." Emily's breath hitched. She peered through the curtain and spotted a black SUV parked at the curb. Her pulse quickened as the driver's door opened and Nick stepped out, his phone in hand. She swung the door open before he could knock. "I told you to leave me alone," she said, her voice sharp. Nick met her gaze, his expression calm but determined. "I didn't come to argue. We have a problem." "You think?" she snapped, crossing her arms. "I'm getting interview requests, Nick. My life is turning into a circus because of you." "It's not just the media," he said, his tone grave. "There's something else." Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Nick glanced over his shoulder, as if ensuring they weren't being watched, before stepping inside. He handed her his phone, which displayed an email from an unknown sender. "You've made a lot of noise, Mr. Dalton. If you want this to stay quiet, you'll pay, or the whole world learns your dirty little secrets." Emily's stomach churned. "Is this blackmail?" Nick nodded. "They're threatening to leak details about the transfer, and about Lily." Her knees went weak and she sank onto the sofa. "Oh my God." "I've already contacted my security team," Nick said, his voice steady. We're tracking the sender. Tracking them, she repeated, her voice rising. What if they go public before you find them? What if they hurt Lily? They won't, Nick said firmly. I won't let that happen. Emily buried her face in her hands, the weight of everything pressing down on her. This is too much. I can't do this, Nick. I can't fight this battle. You won't have to, he said, sitting beside her. I'll handle it. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with doubt. Why are you doing this? Why now? Nick hesitated, his jaw tightening. Because I owe you, he said finally. I owe Lily, and because walking away was the biggest mistake of my life. His words hung in the air, heavy with emotion. Emily wanted to believe him, but a part of her still held on to the pain he had caused. Before she could respond, Nick's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. They've sent another message. Emily leaned closer as he opened the email. This time it included a photo, one of her and Lily walking to the park the previous week. The caption read, "Time is running out." Fear clawed at her chest. They're watching us. Nick's eyes hardened. Not for long. Over the next few days, Emily found herself swept into Nick's world. A world of private investigators, cybersecurity experts, and constant surveillance. Despite her resistance, she couldn't deny the relief of knowing someone was protecting her and Lily. But the tension between her and Nick remained palpable. Every conversation felt like a minefield, laden with unspoken truths and unresolved feelings. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nick found Emily sitting on the fire escape, staring out at the city skyline. He joined her, the silence stretching between them. I never wanted this for you, he said quietly. Emily turned to him, her expression weary. Then why did you leave? Nick sighed, running a hand through his hair. Because I was scared. Scared of failing you. Scared of becoming my father. She frowned. Your father? He was a workaholic, Nick explained. He poured everything into his business and had nothing left for his family. I didn't want to do that to you, to Lily. Emily's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. But instead, you left us. I know, he said, his voice heavy with regret. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily said softly, It's not just about the money, Nick. It's about trust. And right now, I don't know if I can trust you. Nick nodded, his expression pained. Then let me earn it. But as they sat there, the darkness of the city creeping in, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the storm wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. The blackmail demands escalated over the next few days. The emails came faster, each one more threatening than the last. Pictures of Emily and Lily at their apartment, on the playground, even outside her workplace, appeared with chilling regularity. Whoever was behind this knew far too much about her life. Emily's nerves were fraying. Every time Lily ran ahead too far on the sidewalk, Emily's heart would seize with panic. She could barely focus at work, jumping every time her phone buzzed. She hated how her life had spiraled out of control, and how much she was now relying on Nick. Nick, meanwhile, was relentless. He worked late into the night with his security team, poring over leads and trying to track the blackmailer. Every time Emily saw him on the phone, his face hard and intense, she felt a pang of something she couldn't name. Gratitude, perhaps, mixed with the remnants of the love she had once felt for him. One evening, as Emily sat at the kitchen table trying to distract herself with a cup of tea, Nick walked in, his expression grim. We have a lead, he said. Emily set her cup down. What kind of lead? My team traced the emails to a burner account. They think it's connected to someone I used to do business with, a guy named Carter Reed. She frowned. What does he want with us? Nick hesitated. He has a grudge against me. I cut him out of a major deal a few years ago when I found out he was embezzling funds. He lost everything. Emily's stomach twisted. And now he's using Lily and me to get back at you. Nick nodded, his jaw tight. That's what it looks like. What are you going to do? She asked, her voice trembling. I've already contacted the authorities, he said. But Carter's careful. It might take time to pin this on him. Emily stood, her hands trembling. We don't have time, Nick. He's watching us. He knows everything about our lives. What if he... Nick reached out and took her hands in his. Emily, listen to me. I won't let anything happen to you or Lily. I promise. His touch was steadying, and for a moment, Emily let herself believe him. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw the weight of his own guilt and fear. He wasn't just fighting for her and Lily, he was fighting to prove something to himself. The breaking point came 2 days later. Emily had just picked Lily up from daycare when her phone buzzed with another email. She glanced at it, her heart sinking as she saw another photo of her and Lily, taken earlier that day. But this email was different. It included a location, a high-end hotel downtown, with a time, 7 p.m. that evening, and a single line of text. "Come alone, bring Lily, or the world finds out everything." Emily's hands shook as she showed the email to Nick. His face darkened as he read it, his jaw clenching with barely restrained anger. "You're not going," he said firmly. "I don't have a choice," she shot back. "If I don't show up, who knows what he'll do?" "You do have a choice," Nick insisted. "You stay here with Lily, and I'll go." "He doesn't want you. He wants me." Emily's chest tightened. "And what if he hurts you, Nick? What if this is some kind of trap?" Nick's expression softened as he placed a hand on her shoulder. "I've handled worse than Carter Reed. Trust me." That evening, Emily sat in her apartment, pacing anxiously as Nick prepared to leave. He wore a dark jacket, his expression unreadable as he tucked a small earpiece into his ear. His security team had set up nearby, ready to intervene if anything went wrong, but it did little to ease Emily's nerves. "You don't have to do this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Nick paused by the door and looked back at her. "Yes, I do." And then he was gone. The hours crawled by, each second stretching into an eternity. Emily couldn't sit still. She checked her phone constantly, waiting for updates, but the silence was deafening. Lily, thankfully oblivious to the tension, played quietly in the corner with her toys. Finally, at just past 9 p.m., Emily's phone rang. She snatched it up, her heart pounding as she saw Nick's name on the screen. "Nick," she said breathlessly. "It's over," he said, his voice calm but tinged with exhaustion. "Carter's in custody." Emily sank into the sofa, relief washing over her like a tidal wave. "What happened?" "It was a bluff," Nick explained. "He didn't have the resources to follow through on his threats. He was hoping I'd cave and pay him off before he ran out of options." She let out a shaky laugh, the tension finally releasing from her body. "I can't believe it's over." "It's over," Nick repeated. "You and Lily are safe." In the days that followed, Emily struggled to process everything that had happened. The media frenzy began to die down thanks to Nick's lawyers and a carefully crafted statement. But Emily knew the real work was just beginning. One evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, Nick knocked softly on the doorframe. Emily turned to see him standing there, his hands in his pockets and a tentative look on his face. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded, following him into the living room. They sat on the sofa, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between them. "I meant what I said," Nick began, "about wanting to be part of Lily's life, and yours." Emily looked down at her hands, her thoughts swirling. "Nick, I don't know if I can forgive you for the past, but I can't deny that you've been here when it mattered most." "I'll take that," he said with a faint smile. "I'm not asking for everything at once. Just a chance." She met his gaze, and for the first time in years, she saw something in his eyes that she hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. It wasn't the arrogant, self-assured Nick she had married. This was a man willing to fight for his family, no matter the cost. "Okay," she said softly. "A chance." His smile widened, and for a moment they simply sat there, the weight of the past finally beginning to lift. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and Nick began to rebuild, piece by piece. It wasn't easy. Trust took time, and there were still wounds to heal. But for the first time, Emily allowed herself to hope. And as she watched Nick read a bedtime story to Lily one evening, his voice soft and full of warmth, Emily realized that sometimes second chances weren't about forgetting the past. They were about creating a future worth fighting for.